Are you gonna join me, squirrel? Are you joining me? Lucas. Lucas. I'm getting shot down for a kiss. Are you leaving me hanging? She's leaving me hanging. See what I have to work with here. Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's more a nose bump, but it's out. So thank you. Happy push.
Welcome to the voicemail box of your local friendly Necromancer. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Please leave a detailed message on which human, animal, or vicious hellbeast you would like to resurrect. Your call will be returned within 3 business days to book an appointment. Please ensure to have your down payment of your soul or firstborn child, or the soul or firstborn child of another being if you do not have one, at the time of your appointment. Thank you.
Hi, squirrel. I have a co-host. A living co-host this time. If you see a giant fuzzy thing behind me, it's not a bear. It is my St. Bernard squirrel. She'll probably join us. I know she will. She loves to bug me while I film. Welcome back, fiends, ghouls, and spirits who traumatize the living by knocking down objects, and everybody thinks it's malicious, but you're actually just kind of clumsy and have no spatial awareness. This is the local Necromancer's coffee break, where we transcend this boring-ass human life and absorb all the paranormal juices. Why did I start that? Why did I start the paranormal juices? It sounds so wrong, but here we are. Little different background today, as I decided that filming in the darkness with a tiny light on my webcam was probably not the best idea. I'm sure my background's going to change 100 more times because I have no idea what I'm doing yet, but then again, when do I actually know what I'm doing? Because in the wise words of my favorite meme, if you can't blow them away with your brilliance, then baffle them with your bullshit. I live my life by it. Today, we're diving into the history of what is reportedly Erie, PA's first documented haunted house, which sounds pretty cool until you realize, wait a second, this isn't like, the first underwater zoo in Erie or the first college in Erie. No, it is the first of many, many haunted locations. So I guess they call it Erie for a reason. Our tale follows the Stone Estate at 3506 East Lake Road near Lawrence Parkway in the Lake Erie shoreline, and begins with the family whose initial ownership of the property was plagued with accidents, murder, and grief. Thomas Crowley was born in Ireland in... I almost said 3506. I need to actually look at the correct notes in my document, apparently. Try that again. Thomas Crowley was born in Ireland in 1789. He and his wife had multiple children before immigrating, including Bartholomew, who was born in 1813. Now, one thing I've noticed in some of my research is, I swear to God, these people in the 1800s were rabbits. Every time I read about these families consistently having 10 to 15 children, I'm really glad I was gutted like a fish. Do not miss the uterus. Thomas, his wife, and their children immigrated to Erie, Pennsylvania in 1821, and his brother Michael followed shortly after in 1826. It's said that Thomas did have other children born in Erie as late as 1836, and I believe when I actually looked up the ancestry, there were... Let me look. I have it on my phone. I won't baffle you with my bullshit today. I'm gonna baffle you with my sources. Because one thing I do when I'm doing history on haunted locations is any predominant figures at that location, I start looking through family research to see if maybe I'm somehow related to them down the line. I actually have a theory that when we go to haunted locations and we're trying to connect with spirits, spirits tend to gravitate towards maybe one person in your group, or they might hate another person in your group. And I'm fascinated by the idea of what causes that. Part of me wonders if, our loved ones connect with us in the afterlife. Would that also translate to people who may have been 100 times removed from us, but they're still related to us somehow? Would they tend to gravitate towards us, whether it's with more interaction, more kind interaction, or would they tend to attack us a little more? And it's why I dive so much into family history when I'm researching the history of some haunted locations. Also, if you guys are wondering why I'm bundled up like I'm going to the Arctic, it's currently extremely cold outside. The heat doesn't necessarily work here in my office very well, which is lovely, especially when I'm working from home. But thankfully, I know I mentioned in the other video that Erie, PA and all these haunted locations, they're very local to me. Thankfully, I live just enough outside that we're actually not getting the massive blizzard numbers that they're getting out in Erie right now. At the time that I'm filming this, they actually just called in the National Guard for help. And we live in an area where we're no strangers to snow. Blizzards are a normal thing for us. So when they started saying, oh yeah, we're calling the National Guard, this is an emergency, I'm like, oh shit, but we're all safe here. It's just very cold, and especially in this office. Okay, I have found Thomas Crowley, born, 1789 in Ireland. Okay, so he wasn't the one with the wild amount of children. He only had 6, including Bartholomew, who's the one I was thinking of because he is absolutely the one with 10 children. I can't even imagine that. I love kids, I do, don't get me wrong, but 10 of them is... So anyway, Thomas, Michael, and their families were said to be among the richest landowners in the region at their time, even donating land and money toward building St. Patrick's Church in the 1830s. Unfortunately, no amount of wealth would save the Crowley family from tragedy. The family initially lived in very tight quarters, with Thomas, his wife, their children, and Michael all sharing one small home. And just to remind you all, Thomas and his wife had 6 children. There's 9 people in one very, very tiny little home. But finally, in 1827, Michael bought 399 acres of land along both sides of 4 Mile Creek in Lawrence Township. He split it into 5 sections, selling some of it to his brother Thomas and keeping the plot for himself near East Lake Road and Crowley Road, which are known today as Water Street and Lawrence Parkway. In 1832, Michael built the Crowley Estate on the west bank of 4 Mile Creek. Built in a Greek Revival style, it has 18-inch thick stone walls that have stood to this day and stand out against the other residential homes in Erie County. The home is beautiful, with a stone exterior, an orchard, and lively gardens. Thomas Sr.'s son, Bartholomew, kept all of the grounds well manicured. Over the years, Michael Crowley continued farming and married Mary O'Neill from New York State. They had 2 children named Thomas and Mary, because in this story, there are no shortages of Thomases and Marys. It is very hard to keep track of. I am so sorry. So from here on out, I'm going to be referring to Michael's son Thomas as Thomas Jr. No, he is not Thomas Crowley's son, so technically he's not Thomas Jr. I know that, but I have to do it for my own sanity and to hopefully keep it a little clearer for you guys because I got confused as hell writing this, so I don't want to even imagine how confusing it's going to be for you guys to try to watch this. Now, reportedly, Mary died very young in a carriage accident while she was riding to school with her neighbor, so we have one less Mary to deal with. Super sorry, Mary. It's incredibly sad, but I'm kind of okay with having one less Mary in this story. You'll see why. Thomas Jr., however, born on May 24th, 1830, attended public school in the Erie Academy while helping his father tend to the farm. As an adult, he briefly worked in the oil industry before becoming a police officer for the city of Erie. In 1853, he was elected as Erie's chief of police, serving until 1870 when he became a private detective until 1876. But in 1877, he was re-elected as chief of police. Thomas Jr. married twice and had 1 child with each wife. His son Michael, another Michael, I know, yes, Michael Jr., was an engineer for the Pennsylvania and Erie Railroad, while his daughter Clarabelle worked for an Erie grade school. It was rumored for over a century that the Crowley Estate was a stop on the Underground Railroad before and during the Civil War, with tunnels underneath the building that helped slaves escape to the lakeshore and to be taken to Canada. And for a long time, all these were rumors, so remember this fact for later because it will come back up again. After the death of Thomas Crowley Sr., the one who originally immigrated from Ireland, Bartholomew inherited the Crowley Estate. When Bartholomew's wife, Louisa, passed at a young age, he took to raising their daughter, also named Mary, on his own. In 1893, disaster would strike 80-year-old Bartholomew and his family, and the neighboring family member, the wife of John Crowley. Violent robbers invaded, as documented in the original break-in article from the Buffalo Express on November 2nd, 1894. The article's headline details, "Brutes, atrocious acts of 3 masked burglars make a raid on the Crowleys at Harbor Creek and demand money." I was definitely very thankful to find this news article. It's wonderful. It details the story so well. Like, it was exclusive to the Buffalo Express, and it gives such a good detailed overview of all the events that happened because this break-in is wild. But there's one piece of wording here that I had to laugh at because it's the very first line of the article, which states, "The town of Harbor Creek is wild with excitement." I don't think it was excitement that they were wild with. Devastation, shock. If it was excitement, that's concerning. Mrs. John Crowley and Bartholomew Crowley live near to each other in Harbor Creek. They are both rich and their houses are fine ones because that's not going to tell any more burglars to not go rob them. They have fine houses, go get them! So first, the burglars went to Mrs. John Crowley's house and climbed through her window, tried to find any money, didn't find anything, got really pissed, grabbed an axe from the woodshed out back, and went through every room in that house, demolished every piece of furniture. I mean, the article states that nothing escaped the wrath of the vandals. Everything was basically turned to kindling because these 2 burglars were mad that this rich, nice, fine home did not have money stored inside. But unfortunately, after they were finished devastating Mrs. John Crowley's home, they weren't done. They didn't find what they wanted, so they went down the street to Bartholomew Crowley. Now, Bartholomew was 80 years old at the time, and his daughter Mary lived with him, and when these burglars broke in, they beat and abused Bartholomew demanding money. Mary told her, hey, you're not getting anything, you guys need to scram, so they turned their attention to her. They threatened her life, beat her, and then noticed that she had lovely rings on her fingers. So instead of, grabbing her hand and yanking off the rings, they took a little different measure. The article details that they do pull out pocket knives, they cut and slash up her hands, they severely wound her, and they cut off her rings right in front of her father. Meantime, Bartholomew tried to get to the door and began calling for help as loudly as he could. So when the robbers heard him, they locked Mary upstairs in her bedroom and ran back down the stairs because they needed to keep Bartholomew quiet. They continued to beat and choke him until he was nearly dead, grabbed a nearby oil lamp, smashed it, and poured the oil on him, threatening to burn both him and his daughter to death. Both thankfully and tragically, just as they were ready to light him on fire, soaked in oil, they heard calamity from upstairs as Mary leapt from her second-floor window to escape. When the robbers heard this, they were scrambling. They can't let her notify the neighbors, obviously, so they just decided, well, let's kick Bartholomew while he's down. He's almost dead anyway, but no, we'll just kick him a few more times while he's laying here on the ground, and then we'll go after the daughter. But Mary managed to escape them, and she reached a neighbor's house, where as soon as she entered, she fainted. She had received not only the devastating injuries from having her rings cut off of her hand and her hands mutilated, but she also received fatal injuries in her jump that did kill her. Now, when the robbers realized Mary had escaped them and notified her neighbors, they decided to take off to the nearby railroad, where they stole a handcar and made away. And not only did they escape that night, they were never found. Now, Bartholomew, after not only watching his daughter's hands be cut to pieces, he now has lost his daughter, but he survived, and he would live 4 more years before his death in 1897. Shortly after, a new family bought the home, a newlywed couple who were originally very, very happy together, but soon they were overwhelmed by a negative presence. Now, it's unknown if this negative energy was truly spiritual or from something paranormal, or if it was just their honeymoon phase wearing off. After moving into the home, they began to argue constantly. The husband was also diagnosed with typhoid, but was expected to make a full recovery, so long as his wife heeded their doctor's warning for her husband to stay away from salt, because it could prove fatal in his condition. But the wife was fueled by all these negative emotions and thought, perfect, I'll just give him salt. So she began to feed her husband massive quantities of salt because why not? Until one night he died very painfully right around midnight. Legend says that every night around midnight, the man's spirit returns to not only torment his wife, but all who came after. He would slam doors, shatter plates, and even knock over an entire china cabinet with poltergeist activity, smashing the glass front to pieces. When the wife had her friend come over to inspect the damage, the china cabinet was stood up perfectly, with no sign of damage, and even the glass front was unscathed. The repeated hauntings, fear, and guilt drove the wife to leave shortly after, and she was never heard from again. Now, for decades, no family that moved in ever stayed long. According to the legends, the hauntings continued, with the most prominent happening right before midnight. The home became abandoned, run down, and locals reported seeing figures moving through the boarded-up windows and even shadows lurking in the old, overgrown gardens. As rumors grew of these shadow figures roaming the estate, the once beautiful mansion was viewed as just a local haunted house. Kids and teens would dare each other to break in and test their bravery alone in the home. Those who visited claimed to be overcome with waves of sadness, anger, and dread, until it was sold to its current owners, Erie area natives Mike and Kathy Goodman. In a blog article on Christine the Writer, the owners sat down with Christine about their efforts to restore the home to its former glory. After much debate about whether or not to buy the property, they eventually took ownership with a heart to bring back the home's charm and intricate beauty. Now, I will link the blog post in the description of this episode where you can read Christine's interview with the Goodmans themselves and see the photos of the beautiful work they've done on this property. They have done a wonderful job restoring all of the little details of this historic home. It is gorgeous. You guys need to check out the blog post. And remember how I mentioned that the Underground Railroad theories would come up again. In the last couple years, a tunnel was discovered and excavated beneath the Crowley Estate. It began in the basement and led to the bank of 4 Mile Creek, where slaves were able to escape to the shores of Lake Erie, where boats would wait to take them safely to Canada. Now, it is currently not possible to gain access to this tunnel but it has seemingly confirmed a longtime legend. The Crowley Estate has fascinated me for a very long time, partly because it is like one of the first documented haunted locations in Erie, so like that's hella cool. But not only that, I mean just the rich history. It's definitely a place that I would love to be able to see in person someday, because just from the pictures alone, it is absolutely stunning. And there were rumors for a long time that the house had actually been completely torn down and that nothing remained but the land, and that the land itself was haunted. But it's really cool to know that like those were just rumors. The house still stands and it is gorgeous thanks to Mike and Kathy Goodman. I hope you all enjoyed this episode today. As you probably noticed, I did not run Spirit Talker in the background. It got very distracting for me in the last episode, but that's not to say that I won't bring it back. I will probably bring Spirit Talker back out when I'm talking about like personal experiences and paranormal encounters that I've had, because it's really fun to see like if my loved ones come through especially. But I think for talking about places like this where I need to be focused on my notes and making sure that I have dates correct and everything, I can't have it running, but I will put it up in the background while I'm doing my outro. Okay, Spirit Talker's running by Gregory. That is not all. I actually have a very exciting and special announcement for today, and that is about the Firelands Paracon. The Firelands Paracon is a paranormal convention taking place in Sandusky, Ohio on Saturday, April 12th. But the coolest part of the convention is that it goes towards a good cause.
Appreciation.
Yeah, we're appreciating the cause, because not only does it go to benefit the care and share of Erie County. I don't know if you guys will hear that. There were just 2 knocks on my desk. That's a little weird. Cool beans, man. Anyway.
Lady.
Okay, yes, lady. Cool. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit because the volume's up really loud and that's why I keep jumping. But proceeds from Firelands Paracon go to benefit the care and share of Erie County and Safe Harbor domestic violence and sexual assault shelters. Now, Safe Harbor shelters actually serve Erie, Ottawa, and Huron counties. They are a wonderful organization that has helped so many people get out of abusive situations. Their website states, by participating in this event or donating requested items, you are directly contributing to the well-being and recovery of individuals and families affected by domestic violence and SA. Now, some of the items that you can donate that will greatly help them in their efforts would be cleaning supplies, non-perishable foods, household items like pots, pans, utensils, baby supplies, personal safety items, books, educational materials, and small furniture items. The Firelands Paracon and Erie events, spelled with 2 E's for Erie, they are very active in bringing awareness and help to those who have been through domestic violence, SA, trafficking situations, and other critical issues. You can visit either of their websites at firelandsparacon.com or Erie, spelled with 2 E's, events. Now, I will be linking these websites and their social media pages in the description of this episode. Now, if you go to the Erie Events website, you can actually find some investigations that will include your ticket to the Paracon. And if you're interested, I will actually be at the investigation at the Beale Manor in Fremont, Ohio, which does include your ticket to the Paracon. I just got mine and I'm super excited. So if you've been looking to go on an investigation, support a good cause, and meet some amazing people at a paranormal convention, make sure to grab your tickets. The next episode, coming next Sunday, will be a dramatic reading of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. So circling back around to talking about doing family research of haunted locations, yada yada yada, I actually am distantly somehow related to Edgar Allan Poe, which is super cool, so hey, why not read one of his stories on the podcast? I hope you all have a lovely day, and if you are also here in the middle of snowpocalypse, please stay warm, stay safe, don't sell your soul, drink lots of coffee, maybe sprinkle a little water in there.
You are accepted.
You are accepted, people. You are accepted. See? You are accepted. Listen to Spirit Talker, because it's right sometimes, but despite all of the wrong random words it spits out at times, you are accepted, you are loved, and you are cherished. Especially, hey, I did get a name today. We got Jason. So if your name is Jason, you are especially loved and accepted, even though my camera will not focus on this because, of course, the window is going to reflect. But Jason, we love you. Oh, and also to Laura, you are also very accepted, very loved, and appreciated, and cherished. I love you, Laura, Jason, and anyone else who's watching. Bye, guys.